about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I teach you all a lot about how to get through a job interview, you know, what to say and how to read, you know, the person that's kind of interviewing you. I mean, I taught you all a lot before COVID, and then all of a sudden we had to, you know, incorporate, well, what happens if it's on Zoom? How do you pick up body language? And, you know, how do you connect and bond when it's now, you know, through a computer and you're not there in person, that's able to giggle and pick up on nuances and look around the office and go, oh gosh, you know, I went to Bishop Gorman also, or whatever. And so now we're doing job interviews through AI. And I had my first job interview using an AI tool. And so basically, you know, physicians are just like anybody else going to eventually be replaced by AI, but not yet, as AI is still learning. And I've been very intrigued about the process of who is teaching AI and who is teaching these prompts, because I'm seeing a lot of the answers wrong. So I got, I guess, solicited for a job to help oversee what the AI is learning. And I was like, well, even if, this is intriguing. Not saying that I really, really want the job. I'm already busy. I'm doing a lot. But I'm like, you know, let me see what this is about. So I'm getting really excited to meet the interviewer just to kind of get some information going, okay, you know, talk to me about this. And instead, it was a computer with the big circle as the computer is speaking to me, as the AI software is speaking to me during the interview. You know, you see the big black circle, and it's like this interview is going to be conducted with AI. And so I didn't know if I should smile at it. You know, I mean, here I am with all my old interview skills. You know, you got to have the good posture. You got to smile, nothing low cut, you know, your hair fairly in check, hands folded nicely, you know, engaging, eye contact. And now what do you do with the computer? The computer's looking. So then I felt like, am I going to be an idiot sitting there smiling at the computer? Although now my computer's talking to me. I apologize. Sorry about that. And so I was almost like, is there a human watching me to see how I'm interacting with the computer, like smiling at it and you know, just body language. So I decided, you know what, to err on the side of caution, I'm just going to treat the computer like a human, because there's a good chance, maybe a small chance, but there's still a chance that a human may actually watch this interview. So I'm going through the interview, and they're asking, it actually was very easy. And it wasn't as anxiety-inducing as another personality that you're trying to read. And, you know, it actually took a lot of the work out of the interview that we usually have, because you're like, okay, you know, read his lips, read his eye expressions, read, you know, and so it was just, well, it's a computer. And so I don't have to do that extra piece. I could just maybe concentrate on my answers. But then instead, I was like, well, wait a second, what does the computer want? So the computer starts asking me questions about how I do medicine and who I am and my approach to medicine and engaging. And I talked about the 3 E's. You want to engage, educate, enlist, etc. And then they asked me a question about cultural differences. What should physicians be doing? You know, should physicians be doing more as it pertains to cultural differences? So I start to bring up how in the Muslim communities, if they are halal, they can't, or even Jewish communities, but I didn't get that far, where they can't have gelatin-based capsules. And before I got to that, as soon as I said Muslim, immediately the AI almost answered like I was interviewing them. And it said, in the Muslim communities, we need to be aware that they can't have gelatin capsules because of their dietary restrictions. And then during Ramadan, we have to understand their fasting. And so it actually then converted to being the interviewee. And then when it stopped, I was like, exactly. That was the answer I was going to give. And then there was a pause. And then I went on to go, that was a great answer on, that was a good, thank you for your answer on cultural differences. I'm like, but you gave me that answer. You jumped in and interrupted me before. I wasn't mad about that, but I was like, okay, what if that wasn't my answer? What if they changed my answer? How do I correct it? So the interview then goes through without a hitch. It was about maybe 15 minutes long. And they say, this was a very, good interview. We really appreciate your answers. And I go, thank you. And, because what do you do at the end of the interview? Go, well, thank you. It was a, honor for me to be able to, interview with your company. I'm excited. I can't wait to hear from you next. Thank you for this opportunity. Whatever. I didn't know what to say to the computer. So I'm like, thank you. I didn't know what to say. And I hang up from it. And it was really easy. But, then it gave me a survey. So it said, was there anything tell me about your experience of this interview? And maybe that's what it was. It was a test to see how it interviewed. And so I said, while I was trying to answer a question about 4 or 5 words in, your software immediately answered the question for me, gave a great answer and one I would have given, but it actually started to answer our questions. And then it apologized. The computer apologized, said, we will look into that. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. And then it ended the interview. So is this how job interviews are going? I don't know if I like it or dislike it. But on one end, you could say it's a bad way to do things because humans you need to pick up on human nuances. You want to, as an applicant, learn your manager and learn your supervisor and learn the landscape. But then on the other end, if all you're doing now at your job is working with a computer, I guess the computer has to like you and you have to like that computer. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Many people avoid life-saving colonoscopy screenings due to unexpected costs. New federal report language urges CMS to make clear patients should have access to all FDA-approved bowel preparations that meet medical standards without cost sharing. Gastroenterologist Dr. Eric Shaw has more.
Despite a federal requirement that preventive colorectal cancer screenings be covered, our analysis found that bowel preparation medications, an essential part of a colonoscopy, often aren't covered by insurance. Clear CMS guidance could help patients access the most effective, more tolerable FDA-approved PrEP.
Despite this, analysis shows 83% of patients still face costs for bowel prep medications.
The quality of the colonoscopy depends entirely on how clean the colon is. If the bowel prep doesn't work well, polyps and cancer can be missed and the patient can need to repeat the procedure, delaying diagnosis and increasing cost.
Visit asge.org to learn more and contact your elected representative to ensure approved bowel prep is covered without cost.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So some of you have heard this case where there was a 12-year-old girl who was bullied and struck in the head with one of those metal water bottles. She ends up suffering a brain hemorrhage after then slips into a coma, and Kimberly Zavaleta Chukwuipa dies after the February 17th attack. The reason why the attack started is she stepped in to protect her younger sister during a hallway confrontation at her Reseda school. Now, another child has been arrested in connection with this girl's death. The death triggered a homicide investigation by the Los Angeles Police Department, which confirmed the arrest of an unidentified child on suspicion of the murder. And you see this beautiful little girl who's gone because she was hit in the head with one of those metal water bottles that a lot of people have, which, by the way, we encourage people to have, to drink water and get away from the plastics. But that it was strong enough, apparently, to cause her to have a brain hemorrhage. So you see students pushing and arguing. Then there was the fatal strike. And now the family has a wrongful death claim suit against the Los Angeles Unified School District. Now, the family alleges, this is according to the New York Post, the family alleges that school officials were aware of ongoing bullying tied to the incident but failed to intervene. This created a dangerous environment that contributed to Kimberly's death. So, according to the attorney, Robert Glassman of Panache Raviputi LLP, says this arrest is an important step toward accountability, but has not changed the bigger truth. The tragedy was entirely preventable. Now, you know, there's apparently she was taken to Valley Presbyterian Hospital, Van Nuys, for evaluation. This is where it gets very. This is why I brought this up. A lot of talking points on this one. After she was hit in the head, she was taken to Valley Presbyterian Hospital in Van Nuys and subsequently released. They looked at her, probably did an initial neurological exam, let her go. 3 days later, she collapsed at home when she was rushed back to the hospital where doctors discovered the, quote, catastrophic brain hemorrhage. She underwent emergency brain surgery, was placed in an induced coma, and then tragically died February 25th at UCLA Mattel's Children's Hospital. So I bring this up because there's a few things. One, the bullying, but I want to talk about the head trauma. I have, as I work with telemedicine, probably every week a parent calling up saying their kid got either hit in the head or fell, has a goose egg, but are they fine? They're not vomiting. They look fine. They don't have to go to the doctor, do they? And every single head trauma patient, I say, no, they should be examined. Even if they don't have a big swell. I mean, I have parents saying, you know, their scalp is tender. They have a big swelling bump. Yeah, is there a skull? Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, there could be a skull fracture. There could be, yes, you got to take them in. But the average parent doesn't want to take their child in, not because they're bad parents. It's because of the way now Obamacare is. Their deductibles are high, or the copay to go to an ER is high. And most urgent cares don't want you to bring a child with head trauma to them. So that's forcing them to go to the ER, and they don't want to spend that money. So instead, they're asking for a remote consultation online. And here's the kid, and the kid is, looking around and, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying. And I can't do a neurological exam remotely. You can do a neurological exam to some degree, but if a child sustained head trauma, there's a lot of unpredictability. Now, usually we look for headache, we look for nausea, vomiting, we look for sleepiness, but those are difficult to, for parents to, shall we say, use as benchmarks because, and obviously nausea, vomiting, things like that, ataxia, falling, loss of balance. I mean, those are obviously severe signs. But a headache can be a severe sign too. And so parents, a lot of them will think, well, it's because my kid hit his head. The head's going to hurt. You're right. That head could hurt. But on the other end, it could also be a bleed or the start of a bleed. Or there could have been a counter-coup contusion of the brain wall, and then a day or two later, the swelling happens. And so it's really difficult to tell day one. Plus, your child is eventually going to get sleepy because they were crying, right, with the head injury. They had a long day, and kids do tend to go to sleep every night because it's bedtime. And so to try to decide, is my kid sleepy because of head trauma, or are they sleepy because it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, is difficult. And that's why I always tell parents, bring the child in so they could be evaluated by a medical provider. We could do a neurological testing if we think we could do a head scan. We could assess if there's a fracture of the scalp. Then when I have parents who say, well, why don't I just watch him? I say, well, this is my advice. I have to, give my advice. But one case that struck me, and I don't have the name of the little boy, but when Liam Neeson's wife died, let me get her name. She was the one that was skiing, and she, I guess, hit her head. This was Natasha Richardson. She died in 2009 when she was skiing in Quebec, Canada. She hit, I guess, a tree. She was on a beginner slope. She fell, hit a tree. And when the medical team came up to her, she's like, I'm fine, I'm good. But she actually had a fatal epidermal hematoma. Ends up dying, I believe, either later that night or the next day. So she felt fine initially, and her condition rapidly deteriorated. So while two parents were watching this news story in March of 2009, they look at each other and they're like, our little boy got hit with a baseball 3 days ago. Let's just check on him. So, he's in bed, and I guess they asked him, do you still have a headache? And he said, yes, I do. So they take him in, and he actually had a bleed in his brain. So the death of Natasha Richardson, how tragic that is, actually ends up saving that other boy's life. Because the parents decide, he still has a headache, and he got hit in the head with the baseball. So the bleed can sometimes not be diagnosed right away. And so this hospital that released this girl, did she have a CAT scan? See, there's also, and maybe she did, maybe they did an appropriate workup, but there's such a big push ever since, again, Obamacare. Hospitals started to actually penalize doctors for ordering too many tests. I don't think any test is too many. If we're talking about the life of, you don't want to be ordering a CAT scan of a head if somebody breaks their foot. But if somebody had head trauma, I think a CAT scan, is appropriate, or an MRI if indicated. I think there are tests that are very appropriate. But there's this big push, don't order too many tests, the radiation, the cost. Well, somebody missed something, because this child died of a hemorrhage. That's scary. So the parents are going to sue the school district. I don't know if there's going to be any liability, because again, if the child had a normal CAT scan on day one, then standard of care would be watch her, and if she has any more symptoms, bring her back. And have her evaluated. I like to always have any head trauma patient evaluated even after they leave the ER. I want you to see your doctor when they open up in the morning. Just want to have another neurological exam. If I'm really worried about the head trauma, I admit them to the hospital. But in this case, they thought she was fine. And so I'm sure we're going to hear more about the case, unless, of course, it settles. But, in terms of the parents suing the school for not controlling the attacks, they have a case. Even though it's really difficult to manage bullying. I was bullied in the 12 schools I went to because my parents moved a lot. There were always bullies. But these kids are walking around with metal, water containers, and these things can be weapons. And I could understand, in fact, for those people who walk, I used to walk around with a racquetball racket when I would work late at night and I didn't have a car, and I would get off work at about 11:30 p.m. So I'd walk around with a racquetball racket so nobody would approach me as I was trying to get back to my apartment. So I can understand how, we might want to tell people to walk around with these metal water bottles because they could be used as a weapon. But if kids are hitting each other with it, they don't understand that it could kill, we got to educate them. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So we've all been thinking it. Why is the TSA a part of the government, and should it be privatized? Because if Congress is going to keep doing this BS, where, no, we're not going to fund the government so that we could use this as an opportunity to get some legislation done or slow down, Trump's presidency and knock days off the remaining days in office he has left. It starts to mess with all sorts of other aspects of our everyday life, and travel is important, is crucial. In fact, I think there, in some definitions of terrorism, is when somebody interferes with travel, interferes with a port, a bridge, an ability to get on a plane, to fly or leave where you need to go. And so we have a very vulnerable situation here with our amazing TSA agents. God bless them. But where now every few months, if Congress people, and this time around, it's, the last two times it's been the Democrats, using the TSA and parts of the government as a bargaining tool so they could have ICE agents remove their masks, it kind of begs the question, when do we eliminate some of our vulnerabilities and change things around so we're not as vulnerable? And as far as I'm concerned, how it should be is if the government is truly shutting down, it shuts down. And within minutes of that happening, America's like, excuse me, and Congress has to work to make sure the government's still running. But instead, it's, well, we're going to hope that these TSA agents will work without any pay and come to work, out of the goodness of their hearts. No, for any of you TSA agents, God bless you for still showing up to work. But for those of you who didn't want to, I don't blame you. And in fact, I think a lot of TSA agents were like, this will be over if none of us go. If we stick together and we don't go, the airports then stop, and Congress is going to have to then, not fly away from Congress like they did, last week for the holiday. They're going to have to stay and fund the government so they could fly home for Easter. That would have probably been a faster resolution. So President Donald Trump, one thing to his legacy is he wants to eliminate vulnerabilities and put us in positions of strength. We're vulnerable to Iran and their nuclear capabilities. We're vulnerable to terrorism. We're vulnerable to cartel. So he's strengthening the border. He's strengthening the economy by trying to get money coming in. And this isn't supposed to be a commercial for him, but this is what was he campaigned for and what he's been trying to accomplish with the tariffs and things like that. You know, if we're so vulnerable in terms of hoping that our taxpayers pay taxes, and we only have at least, less than half of the country actually paying taxes, what if we ensure that we have money coming in from other countries that are utilizing us and not paying their fair share? Why don't we eliminate that vulnerability or lessen that vulnerability by making sure we have money coming in? So it was no surprise when he proposed to begin the process of privatizing airport security operations handled by the TSA. Now, the federal agency was created after the September 11th, 2001 attacks. So according to Reuters, they say that the White House budget proposes cutting the TSA budget by $52 million would require small airports to enroll in a program in which TSA pays for private screeners. TSA has 50,000 federal employees who handle screening at nearly all U.S. airports. Budget documents say airports currently using the program have demonstrated savings compared to the federal screening operations. So I guess small airports would enroll in a budget program where the TSA pays for private screeners. So I'm still not exactly sure what the details are of this. This is being reported by Reuters. But that could be, if we're moving towards more accountability, a separation from the government, in case the government is not doing their job or these Congress people can't get their acts together. Many of us have been saying, when does TSA get privatized, or when do we, privatize airport security? Now, a question people have is, well, wait a second. After September 11th, we had people sadly get through with box cutters. They got through. They were able to hijack planes. Okay, we need to have standards, and we need to make sure that whoever is running things, it doesn't necessarily have to mean we now have 2,000 different private companies running different airport securities. But if it removes the money being held hostage by Congress, we're then able to keep our airports going. The other thing, too, that people are forgetting is if our TSA agents are overworked and underpaid, and they're getting stressed, and the spouse is calling them going, look, we got to pay rent. I've already gone into savings. What do I do? And they're standing there at the airport, still not getting paid. It's a distraction. You don't want any of your workers distracted. One thing about our military that our military does well is they tell that the enlisted men and women, that they ensure that the health insurance is strong, their salaries are going there, unless of course Congress screws with that, and that their families, are going to have God forbid anything happens, they have a system in place for the families. Now, it doesn't mean that they financially support the families, but they have a plan, because if your military is sitting there, on tour, and they start to go, well, wait a second, what do I do with my kid? What do I do with my wife? What do I, they're not going to be able to concentrate. They have to be able to concentrate on the job at hand. Same thing with us doctors. I mean, if we're going into surgery and whatever, I mean, you can't be worried about a fight you just had. You can't be dealing with in-laws. You have to be focused. And so this is really taking away the focus of our TSA agents. Now, according to Reuters, Trump fired the head of the TSA, David Pekoski, on his first day in office and has not nominated a replacement. Last year, the White House said it wanted funding cut for the TSA by $247 million because they consistently failed audits. while implementing intrusive screening measures that violate Americans' privacy and dignity. So they say that the cut TSA staffing levels, and I don't know much about what happened with Doge, and you know, but I don't believe Doge cut TSA. You guys might know more than that. However, we have a situation here where every few months our TSA is vulnerable, and we need to stop that. And you can't expect, and now that the TSA agents are slowly coming back, and thank God for that, but when they weren't getting paid, you had people who were working double shifts, were not getting days off. How is that improving our security? And we don't want people taking advantage of that. Now, I understand why we have all the rules with the shoes, and remember there was the underwear bomber, and then I guess there was somebody in the UK that wanted to mix a couple fluids. That's why now we only have 4 ounce. I think that's 3.4 ounce limit. And so anytime there's a threat, we always seem to be a little bit behind the curve. And so one thing that I also want to see TSA is where they're ahead of the curve. We don't start banning things because something happened. We look at where there's potential threats and then screen preemptively. So we'll see what happens with this, but I do agree that we might need to look at a privatization of it. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme, the solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive this stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. So one thing that really gets my panties all up in a bunch is fraud, especially healthcare fraud. And it kills me to think that there are disgusting individuals in the healthcare community taking advantage of patients and taking advantage of taxpayer money. Well, we now have an task force led by Vice President J.D. Vance, and he has revealed a staggering increase in California hospice and healthcare providers that have been suspended as a result of what they've found, with a very, brief start, early start to their crackdown on fraud. Fox News Digital has been told now 221 providers in Los Angeles have been suspended due to suspected fraud. including a number of providers who were actually raided by the feds. They say the latest number of suspensions marks a more than 215% increase from the 70 providers initially suspended in Los Angeles as a result of the task force. And authorities are saying there's going to be more. And so there's been fraudulent businesses. There's been individuals pretending that they are providing hospice care, and you're looking at this going, okay, I'm barely getting Medicare and Medicaid to cover my patients' medications and chest X-rays and and you have millions of dollars being spent and wasted due to fraud. So the FBI has arrested a married couple who was accused of fraudulently billing Medicare for $7.45 million. $7.45 million. You know how many people that could have helped? They ran a hospice where their survival rate for this hospice reportedly was 97% after 5 years. Now, hospice, sadly, is where patients go to, shall we say, go through their final chapter of their health care. If they do have, let's say, a terminal illness, with dignity, with peace, with comfort. And so when somebody enters hospice, like we saw with former President Carter and other, celebrities and famous people or our own family members, it is usually their final chapter. We have had some people that were able to get out of hospice, just like former President Carter. I believe he was in hospice and then was able to leave hospice and go back home, and I think still lived months after that. But it usually connotes a final chapter. And so this particular hospice, most of the people lived. Now you'd think, well, wow, and this is a great hospice. Yeah, but it's not a hospital. Okay, hospice doesn't necessarily cure. So what are they doing? So a high survival rate at a hospice provider is a red flag. The state auditors said because most people who enter hospice are in the final stages of a terminal illness. They say in past cases, according to CBS News, operators were found to be using false or stolen identities to collect federal reimbursements for palliative care. And palliative care is for end-of-life care and pain control. So the targets of the early morning operation were Galdwin and Amilu Gill, a doctor and a psychologist who co-owned 626 hospice. They did business at St. Francis Palliative Care. Now, the FBI raided them. This was in a residential neighborhood of San Dimas, California. And then SWAT announced over loudspeaker that an arrest warrant. And also Dr. Oz was even on scene. He's the one that oversees the federal Medicare system. And then the Justice Department later announced that 8 people, including the Gills, had been arrested and federally charged in connection with the healthcare and hospice fraud investigation. So, how they found people or they paid people to pretend to be patients. And now I guess there's like 15 defendants, more than half of them accused of hospice fraud. And so there's a lot of work cut out for them. In fact, we're being told by CBS News that over 700 of the roughly 1,800 hospices in LA County has triggered multiple red flags for fraud as defined by the state. We're talking 700, right? More than a third of the 1,800 hospices in LA County. What are some of the red flags? Well, low patient counts, excessive billing, staff shared across multiple companies, and supposedly terminally ill patients who are later discharged alive. They say another red flag is multiple hospices clustered in one building, including one office plaza that had 89 registered hospices. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, what it means is there's not patients there. You have 89 entities that are collecting checks, but where are the patients? So, I mean, this is ridiculous. They say Medicare fraud has been an acute issue in Southern California. But here's the thing. We're talking about Southern California. What about beyond LA County? What about beyond Orange County? What about, other states? If this was happening in California, you bet your butt this is happening in other places. So the Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General reported in 2023 that suspected hospice fraud totaled an estimated $198.1 million. Now, this is of the fraud being caught. And this is just hospice. What's happening in hospitals or other medical centers or home health? This is frightening. And why would anybody who dedicates their life to medicine turn criminal? Yeah, I mean, I would, you know how difficult it was to get through medical school? And not academically, I passed all my tests first time and boards and all that. But I mean, it was just exhausting. 36 plus hour shifts. It was difficult to go through that. Why would I sacrifice any aspect to my licensing or ability to deserve care so I could get an extra $25 a patient or an extra $40 a patient? Why would I do that? But apparently some people are like, well, there's easy money. See, Medicare, when I ran my office, was very difficult to work with. They had glitches in their system. They said they paid when they didn't. I'm like, my bank account never got a check from you. You're telling patients that you paid and you didn't. You're only giving me 12 cents per flu shot, and the flu shot cost me more. I had issues with Medicare. And when they did pay on a claim, that was nice, but it wasn't every claim. And it was always a fight. And when you tried to call, it was a loop. The computer system did not have easy access or ways. Now it might be better. But because now I'm hearing doctors like, oh, Medicare is the best payer. We could very easily get our money from Medicare legitimately, for claims. I wish it was like that in the 2000s and the 2010s. Because that was not my experience with Medicare. So I guess what happens is when a company, run by somebody who is a criminal and has criminal intent, goes, we're not getting paid on these claims, but we could get paid this way. And how you get paid is you submit this code. So let's just keep submitting this code. They become criminals. And it's frightening because we have a huge baby boomer population that is going to require a lot of resources, which the younger generations are not putting the money in or capable of doing. Not to mention we don't have a lot of kids helping their baby boomer parents, and now a lot of the Gen X's and fewer and fewer people are having kids. And so we need to know that whatever money we have that these baby boomers put into the system by working since the 50s and 60s and 70s would be there for them. So to see something like this really ticks me off. The 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Many people avoid life-saving colonoscopy screenings due to unexpected costs. New federal report language urges CMS to make clear patients should have access to all FDA-approved bowel preparations that meet medical standards without cost sharing. Gastroenterologist Dr. Eric Shaw has more.
Despite a federal requirement that preventive colorectal cancer screenings be covered, our analysis found that bowel preparation medications, an essential part of a colonoscopy, often aren't covered by insurance. Clear CMS guidance could help patients access the most effective, more tolerable FDA-approved PrEP.
Despite this, analysis shows 83% of patients still face costs for bowel prep medications.
The quality of the colonoscopy depends entirely on how clean the colon is. If the bowel prep doesn't work well, polyps and cancer can be missed and the patient can need to repeat the procedure, delaying diagnosis and increasing cost.
Visit asge.org to learn more and contact your elected representative to ensure approved bowel prep is covered without cost.